Hello and welcome back to another Warlords of Draenor news video. So this one's just going to be a little bit low-key. Right now I'm in the middle of getting a new place set up at university. I'm super busy. So yeah, this is just going to be a quick little thing. There's just one or two little bits of news that have went on, and this video also just lets me update you on the general state of things. So yes, I'm back at university, getting into a whole bunch of projects and things like that. It's probably just going to take like a week or so to be fully in the swing of things, but hopefully I'll be able just, to work out a decent way of doing things and, managing my time and all that stuff, which, yeah, should be quite fun. I don't anticipate too much of an interruption, and I don't think it's going to affect the Warlords of Draenor coverage really at all. So, yeah, that's all good stuff. Now, with all that said, it's time to talk about one or two little bits of news that have happened over the last while. So, first of all, we have got the treasure room. Now, this is a bit interesting. So, as I'm sure many of you know, in patch 5.2, they added the treasure room. And, of course, that treasure room was the thing with, the Palace of Lei Shen. Basically, you could get a key by, I think it was in the chest. Yeah, you get a key inside the chest that were scattered throughout the Timeless Isle, or the Isle of Thunder, even. And, yeah, you could go in there, get some money, get some, items and various things. But that is being removed in Warlords of Draenor. Blizzard's reasoning for this is that essentially, because you'd be able to one-shot all the mobs, it would be too easy. All the challenge would be gone, and it would be a free 500 gold per character per week. Now, on 10 characters, that's 5,000 gold, which is a lot of money, and I can actually see that being a serious sort of inflation problem. Though, honestly, I think that it was a cool enough achievement, and maybe they could have just Feat of Strength, the old achievements, / just remove them and let people still go in and maybe just nerf the gold amount a little bit. I don't really think there is any particular need to completely remove that bit of content because it still is fun. Alternatively, of course, they do have scaling tech that actually works rather seamlessly. I can say from my dungeon experience, I'm pretty impressed with just how well their scaling works, so maybe they could have just done that. A little bit of a pity, actually, that they're going to be removing that, but I suppose that's just how it's going to pan out. Another thing that I saw is the Cindermane Charger mount. Yeah, I'm going to be kind of going through this a bit more quickfire, just, by way of getting things actually done. So yes, the Cindermane Charger is actually a really cool mount. It's a fiery horse thing, which is awesome. It's also got wings. It seems to be using the standard model that, say, the Celestial Steed and Invincible used, or at least the Skeleton. Of course, the model itself is, unique skin and all that. And I've got to say, it's really, really cool. The bad news is that it is a recruit a friend mount, so if you want to get that via normal gameplay, well, tough luck. You will have to recruit a friend to the game, / recruit one of your other accounts, or, do something like that. It's a pretty cool mount, though, so, yeah, it's totally cool to see that. Yeah, I like it. Anyway, next up, we've got a super exciting bit of news, actually, and this is Warcraft 3. So, this is actually something that I noticed on MMO Champion. They saw that a recent update for the Battle.net launcher involved an icon for Warcraft 3 and then also a background. Now, looking at the background, I can say that it does fit in within the style of the Battle.net launcher, including, having the little Gaussian blurred thing at the top, so it certainly looks like, and this would anyway suggest that perhaps Warcraft 3 will be coming on the Battle.net launcher, and that's pretty cool. A while ago they did say that they had a small team or something like that working on some of their older titles to try to bring them up to, to run on Windows 7 and 8 for all the people using 8. Yeah, all 8 of you. And, yeah, I think that's actually really cool. It would be nice if they would just update, maybe just do some new features or a slight graphical overhaul or, a little bit more than just a direct port. I think that would be pretty cool because, of course, the original Warcraft 3, from what I know anyway, does pretty much run on everything. I know it runs in my Windows 7 computer at the very least. So, yes, I actually think that would be really cool. And Warcraft 3, by the way, is a fantastic game. It really is fun. It's just so good. And especially if you're into World of Warcraft, I absolutely recommend playing that because a lot of the lore of at least the pre-Cataclysm stuff in World of Warcraft all comes from Warcraft, 1, 2, and 3. Especially 3 with, Illidan and then, of course, Arthas. So, yeah, some really, really nice stuff there, and I certainly hope that comes. Of course, though, this is not a confirmation. There's been no official word from Blizzard. This was just a thing that was spotted by MMO Champion. Speaking of things spotted by MMO Champion, I saw them post that apparently Jay Wilson is working on World of Warcraft. So, yeah, I mean, hey, it's Jay Wilson. I don't know. A lot of people blame him for being the guy who kind of made Diablo 3 always online, with the auction house and all that. We don't really know how much that was actually him. Maybe there was some higher ups who were like, yo, we want auction house money. so then he had to go with that. But certainly, he did respond to criticism in a very purr way by saying, like, fuck that guy, about one of the main Torchlight 2 people, I believe anyway, who was actually an ex-Blizzard North designer, and Blizzard North, of course, were the people who made Diablo 1 and 2. So yeah, that's what's going on there. Jay Wilson on WoW. You know what? Like, Diablo 3, even at launch with all of its loot problems, it did have very fun combat and lots of stuff like that. So maybe he does have, you know, good things to bring to the table. In fact, he probably wouldn't have got, like, into Blizzard in the first place if the guy didn't have something of value to offer. So yeah, I just thought that was a bit of news that would be pertinent to people because y'all seem to care about Jay Wilson a lot. Now, another big post came out from Blizzard. This was about the Brawlers Guild. Essentially, the Brawlers Guild is, as you know, being put into a new season in Warlords of Draenor. That's basically because they want to rejig a few things, and actually they've done some pretty good changes, stuff that I think will fix a lot of problems that people had. So all of the current achievements will become legacy ones, and there'll be a new batch of achievements that will all be labeled as Season 2, so that will differentiate them. Now, the rewards are pretty much all the same. I think they're updating the ring that you get in patch 6.0.2 so that it's going to have valuable stats for all specs, which is pretty nice. Now, the interesting thing is that they're going to be, well, of course, bringing everything up to level 100, but also they are going to be kind of rejangling up a few of the tiers. So for an example, what Blizzard said is that Bruce is now going to be a rank 5 boss instead of rank 1. They're also putting it down to 8 tiers of progression rather than the current 10, and those additional bosses will be made challenge cards. They're also, well, for an example, they're removing, say, Hexos from the progression. So he's still available as a challenge card, but I think the problem with Hexos was that while it was fun, and of course, you know, inspired by Super Hexagon, which is an excellent game by Terry Kavanagh, which you should check out, but the problem with Hexos was if you had a per connection or maybe a per computer or something like that, then you would run into issues, and I'd say that perhaps a few of the bosses had a bit of a problematic nature like that. So yeah, they also said they're not going to be adding any new bosses or challenge cards, but they did say that Meatball will be a Garrison follower that will be added, providing you actually beat the boss, and that in the future they may update a few things, but until then, it's just going to be a few little tweaks here and there. There are also 2 features that we found out about. First of all, there's going to be a character name reclamation thingy. Essentially, a whole bunch of characters from, like, 2008 and stuff are having their names freed up, or before a certain date in 2008. This should be pretty good, actually. It's going to fill up, or free up a lot of character names. Obviously, you know, 100 million people or something like that have actually played World of Warcraft over the last, 10 years, and it's really getting to the stage where it's hard to get a name that you want without having to use special characters. So yes, it's totally good that that's being added. I think there are 1 or 2 little restrictions and caveats, so yeah, that's what's going on there. Then there's also the character undelete feature. This will let you basically undelete a character. However, you can only do it once per month. I think this is a really nice feature, though honestly I don't think it's something that a lot of people are going to find useful, but you know what? I think it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Ultimately, though, if someone's account gets hacked and they need to, restore a character or something like that, well, they're going to have to contact customer support anyway, because chances are they've got more than one character to undelete. So, it's hard to imagine what the target of that feature is. I guess it's just people who have got severe anger problems and delete their characters one at a time. Maybe that's a large enough demographic. Though I suppose that anything that cuts down on customer support time is really a good thing. The less those guys are just, hassled up by random crap like this, then perhaps the more that they can spend time on some of the perhaps a little bit more complex issues that people might have with the game. Now, that's basically it in terms of the Blizzard news that's happened recently. And they also did a blue post about 2 hours ago about dungeons, and it was more just about the kind of craft of the dungeons and, the story and things like that. So for an example, we learned that the Iron Docks was actually originally a PvE quest area, but then they decided it would make a really badass dungeon. I'd actually say that's totally true. It makes an awesome dungeon. So yeah, I suppose if you're into the art and a bit more of the design of things, then that would totally be of relevance to you. But yes, that is essentially it for the more recent comings and goings. There have been quite a few beta updates over the last while. They've really been ramping up the tuning. I think that in the most recent one, they of course did a bunch of class tuning, but they also tuned, they tuned up some of the daily cooldown stuff for professions. So that happened. Oh yes, and finally there was a post about the legacy content in Warlords and what the squish is going to be like, where they just reaffirmed again and again that don't worry, everything should be roughly the same, bar a few quality of life changes. So, for example, being able to skip Valrithria, or having Thorum's bizarre lightning ball mechanic not be a thing anymore because they were just annoying as hell. Yeah, there's a bit of a concern at the minute with some of the squishes. And basically, some things may be a little bit harder for some classes. That's more because, say, tanks won't be able to cheese resolve to solo world content, and a few changes like that will happen, which will be making the content harder, but not by numbers, just by class design changes. Their goal is just to make sure that the stat squish itself doesn't affect the post-legacy content. So really, it would be like any expansion. So, yeah, maybe if some class changes that happened in Cataclysm, they could have made something in, say, the Burning Crusade harder to solo. It would be just like that. So that's essentially it for the Warlords of Draenor news. This show will return once I've got a set worked out at my new place, and that I'll be staying at for the next 8 months to a year for university. And, yeah, thanks for watching all that stuff. I'll hopefully be back in the grindstone. I plan on just spending a lot of the weekend, you know, just working on videos and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm gonna just try to ensure that the university doesn't kind of murder the video schedule completely, because, oddly enough, I actually enjoy making videos. So, yeah, anyway, that's basically it for this video. Thanks for watching all that stuff. Let me know about what was covered in the show, and I'll see you next time.